you've got to be a good listener if you're going to be a good manager. There's no way to get around it.
It's the style of management, not the number.
Yeah.
And I think that's a trap that people might fall into, is like, God, I'm now taking on all of this other person's baggage, essentially.
Speak to the human, understand the person, and manage that individual in front of you. Don't have any preconceived labels.
Welcome back to the Next and Future podcast. I'm Matt, and together with Joel, I run Next and Future, a strategy studio. Today we're going to be focusing on leadership and culture, how that overlaps and interacts with strategy. And in order to do that, I'm really pleased to have Jess and Mark here. So why don't you give yourselves a quick introduction?
So hi, I'm Jess. I'm a design principal at Bupa, working on the My Bupa app, helping to run the XD team there, which is about 50 people.
Hi, I'm Mark. I am CEO of Reason Digital in Manchester. Myself and Jess started Modern.works probably about 5 years ago, with the aim to sort of help new and emerging managers, leaders with their leadership journey.
But before we get into the meat of the content, it would be great to hear, we always do this, about a recent adventure you've been on.
No problem. In about March, I went skiing with a few friends, and it was an adventure because it was a beautiful, glorious day, absolutely amazing weather, great conditions, and we were like, okay, we'll go over to this other area, and a cloud just came in as we were on our way back, and we were like, instead of going the route that we always know for getting back, how's about we try and route this new route that we've never been on before? And this cloud just completely dropped to the point where the guys that I was with, they were a metre away in front of me and I could not see them. And I'm like, I don't know where the edge of the piste is. I don't know whether I'm going to die on this piste, and just had to kind of slowly eke my way down under the cloud. And then finally it was okay. So it felt like an emotional adventure for me, that one, of just not knowing whether I'm going to survive this new route that I'd chosen to take.
Yeah, mine's not as exciting as that. I think from my perspective, I think my adventure is probably cycling, always is, just trying to kill myself on hills.
So let's jump in, and we'll start off with some of the kind of problems or challenges you see around leadership at the moment. And so I'd be really interested to know, what does a modern leader have to deal with that they didn't have to 10 or 15 years ago?
I think from my perspective, I think the onset of, or the post of COVID, I think we've got sort of two challenges. I think that's the sort of hybrid remote working model, and that sort of connection that you have with your staff. I think that means businesses and leaders have to be more on why people should bother coming to work, or why people should want to work for you as a leader or a business that you're responsible for. I think in the past you could almost get away with that sort of interactions sort of in person. I think it was a lot easier to be able to do that. I think for me, it's a lot of businesses are getting that even more wrong now with the onset of the generational buzz that everyone hears now. I think Gen Zs are labelled incorrectly in my opinion. I think it's no different than it was before, but they are more demanding as a generation, quite rightly. I think it's we come from a generation of people where we were taught to work hard, and I think that's no longer the case. So I think from my perspective, they're the two things that will continue to be even more so now with economic pressures and stuff like that. So I think it's really exciting. It makes you more focused as a leader to be on the things that matter.
I don't think it's just because you were taught to work hard. I think it's people's expectations about what they get out of work. Because if you go back in time, people used to go to work because they genuinely had to be able to survive and that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that the economical state isn't bad now, but I think people's expectations from work today is that it's a place that you go to that isn't going to impact your well-being as well. So it's almost like we actually value more of that balance rather than I have to do this in order to survive. It's now I have to do this and I want to be able to live the life I want to. I don't think it's just where it's come from as a hard-working taught thing. It's more of people are more aware now but they need to have that balance to be able to be happy, and actually that allows you to bring your best self to work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's just more now. I think a newer generation will come to a business and say, "Why should I work for you?"
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you've not got that stuff sorted,
Yeah.
then you won't get chosen.
Yeah.
It's no longer a case of I just need a job.
Yep.
And I think they are very clear that if you do not make what they get from that clear, then they'll choose somebody else.
Yep.
And I think that enforces a business or a manager or a leader to be on the things that matter. It's not just about this is what you're here to do, get on and do it. It's actually bringing purpose to that as well. I think people are less inclined now because of the cost of things to see that a job is just the only thing that matters. So yeah.
Cool.
Let's say disagree.
That's cool. And I was reading the other day and I came across this statement, most organisations are overmanaged but underled. And it came up and I thought I'd love to get your perspective on this. Agree, disagree? Where do we land?
I 100% agree. I think particularly when you see it in bigger organisations, it's process over essentially like giving clarity and empowering people. I think everybody tries to ensure that we're delivering the things that we promise to everybody. And to do that, they enforce processes that are like, you must do everything this way. And actually, people are different. Like, everybody is completely different. And if you can offer something that gives more of a, this is the clarity around the outcome we're trying to achieve, how you get there, as long as it's like still hitting all the goals and the way in the time frames and that kind of stuff. Let people figure it out, and then you'll get better people coming up through the business as well over time. But what do you think?
I think the preconceived notion of what leadership is or how you lead is dysfunctional. I think a lot of businesses are set up to say, just tell them what to do.
Because something I've observed about that in businesses is that there's a lot of talk in the popular books and literature stuff around like giving teams more autonomy and that being one of the most important things for motivation in the workplace and drive. But equally, a lot of people who move into managers a role for the first time don't have any other playbook than imposing more kind of process and structure. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic.
And I think that's a trap that you go one of two ways when you first become a manager. You either go into being like, I'm still your friend and it's still going to be really nice and we're all going to be great together and nothing's going to change, and that's completely not true. Everything changes. You're now responsible for this group of people. Or you go into the, right, I'm responsible for this now and I need to make sure that people are delivering to this metric that I'm then held accountable for, and really like kind of close in. And it's honestly a balance. Like you can be a lovely person and encourage people and motivate them, but also don't just always have the stick of like, hit my numbers over here. You can balance them things. And that's what I believe how you get something really good out of people is like be firm, have the rules, but also be there and support them to get there.
Yeah.
That's why we started Modern.works. I think that thing that you just said, how you lead people is sort of that process diagram. You do one-to-ones, you do appraisals, and then they just crack on and do the work for you. And I think what you don't get taught these days is that bit that the first time that you do a one-to-one and somebody turns around and says, I'm having a nervous breakdown, or I'm really struggling with this piece of work, or I really don't understand how to do this, which forces you as a manager to know that the balance is between the two things. Yeah. It's about managing the personal, but also managing what good looks like.
There's been a big trend recently of businesses looking to reduce the amount of managers and management layer, and a big push, particularly I hear from Silicon Valley kind of side of like individual contributors, and we want really senior individual contributors. Yeah. What do you think about that trend? Where do you see that coming from?
It's the style of management, not the number.
Yep.
I think focusing on the number is the wrong thing.
Yep.
And I think we see that from everyone that likes to copy age-old Spotify models and all this sort of stuff. They come a cropper from that, turning around going, well, you can give too much autonomy. But it's like focus on the environment, how you want the team to feel and how you want the business to feel, and work out how you enable that, which always links down to from strategies, purpose, mission, all those types of really good things, which are super important. But I think it's to focus on the number and just saying, right, we're removing all the management, without actually stepping back from that and going, well, what is it we're trying to achieve?
Yep.
Because I think you can go too far.
I think it's interesting your point around scale though there, because there's some magic number that's a roundish 5 that you can actually keep of people's development plans and everything else in your brain. So when you talk about scalability, there is only so much that a person can take on to actually really keep the progression paths for those individuals in place. But I do think middle management, when you're not even managing people, you're just managing processes, that's the bit that I think, okay, well, why isn't the process working rather than why aren't the people working, and what kind of shift do you need to do there? Because actually a lot of that is then down to what kind of outcome are you trying to achieve and what are you making people responsible for, and actually assessing the work. I think at the moment there's a lot of people cutting without actually doing the assessment first of what is needed, like what is the actual things that we're trying to deliver and what is needed if we change the model. It's just kind of a get rid of that line.
Yeah, again, there's reasons businesses are doing that. There's a spreadsheet somewhere that someone that counts beans for a living is sat there going, and again, businesses or leadership within businesses, founders, owners are all sat there looking at this number and saying, you maximise the billable, and it's a horrible phrase, resource within a business, and you minimise the amount of non-billable. And if you don't see the value in the non-billable resource or why it's there, it should be a focus of, well, what are we getting from that, and how do you measure that impact or the value that you add to the business, as much as the resource that actually gives you money in the bank or allows you to invoice. And I think that's the problem. It is on the team as well to actually come up with that culture and that feel themselves.
If I create more room and space for you, you have to fill it and do a good job within that space.
And that comes back to the process thing. You create a team that is being expected to be told what to do if you over process it. You have to be able to start building that space and let things go wrong, because it will, but that's part of the learning, and that's what's going to get you to be a great team in the first place. And I do think that empowering people to actually go, do you know what, you need to figure this out. It's terrifying as like a member of a team if someone turns around to you and goes, go figure this out, but is also the most rewarding thing that they'll actually get to do. So it's scary, but encourage it.
Again, it goes back to your first question. I think for me is removing middle management or management the right thing to do? I think ultimately it's when you design an organisation or how a team sits within an organisation, is to be clear on the roles that you need to produce the type of team or the type of organisation that you want. So it's wrong just to say, for me, if you don't step back, because again, culture, strategy and all that type of thing sits on one side, but org design solves how everything fits together. It's like that provides the inputs, this provides the engine that makes it work better. And I think if you're not checking into that, you can't just sit people on a desk somewhere and say, get on with it then. That, and again, I don't know, it can be perceived that's what we're saying, but I think you almost, there are still responsibilities for the business to organisationally design something that enables them to do that as well. And that usually is those inputs, but then some guidance around, well, what are you measured by? How will you achieve those objectives, and how will we work with you to be able to do that?
So strategy and really strong organisational design rather than an accountant with spreadsheets.
Yes, pretty much.
They're important. They're important for all those.
But if you're doing org change,
friends,
if you are doing org change, it is about the strategy and what kind of shape do you need to be in, rather than going, we've got a problem, we need to just reduce. It's okay, how do we make this work for the best?
It is, but I think I don't think there's a third thing. So I think it still sits within the strategy. I think there has to be a viable, sustainable business there as well. Is that even more so in the climate that we're in now, that if you don't have that lens as well, then you can have this shiniest Maserati that you want, but you're just going to run it into the ground if it's not actually sustainable and actually producing what customers need, or what there is a user need out there. So I think for me that's just as important, again, for all those finance people that I'm friends with.
Moving
on.
what does modern leadership for kind of emerging leaders coming through, what does it require, and what do people most often get wrong or trip up on?
Whether they're right to be a leader is probably the first thing.
Yeah.
I think from my perspective, actually, before you step into leadership, do the work. Actually check into what you get out of a job and whether it is right for you. I think it's quite hard to do that within a business, so go and speak to other leaders within a business, but it isn't right for everybody. It is the most loneliest role you could ever have within a business, and it's the most, if you come into it with the wrong mindset and the wrong set of expectations, because I think the biggest, and probably Jess will jump in, maybe disagree, but I think from my perspective, I think the biggest mistake you make as a new manager or a new leader is that your role doesn't change, or you know what you do on a day-to-day basis doesn't change, and you still get the same things from it. If you don't actually agree with yourself and have that long conversation that I'm no longer going to be the person that people come to and slap on the back and say, well, that's a really good job, that. You very rarely get that praise as a leader. Very rarely. And I think for me is that your role changes from the doing side of things to the other side, which is you should get your dopamine hits from developing people, developing individual people.
I learned that quite early on when I moved from being in a team of 11 practitioners, and I was the most senior practitioner, and the strongest being the longest, whatever. And as I moved to managing that team, I had to shift my mindset from how do I do the best work I can do to how do I get the best collective the best output from this group of people. And actually the best output from that whole group of people is way higher than what I could do on my own, but I had to get that mindset shift to work in a different way and look for success and look for like that positive feel and motivation from a different source.
And I think that's it. It's interesting when you talk about like that dopamine hit, because let's face it, we all love it to be told that we've done a good job. It's so much more rewarding when you see somebody succeed though. Like you've put in them extra hours, like developing them, actually like tapping them around, like actually have you thought about it this way? And then when they get that positive feedback, I feel like that lasts so much longer than that whole like, you've done a good job, now on to the next one. Just seeing them grow kind of lives with you and gives you that smile every day.
And again, I think that comes back to sort of the original question for me is that, so that the things that you get wrong as a leader is that you don't be clear to the business that are asking you to do that. Well, what am I going to be measured by? What's my measures? How am I going? What support am I going to get? I think generally, and it's the other side is that you actually chase that. And again, I think mostly for the wrong reasons, because I think you don't really know what it's like to manage people until you sit in that room for the first time doing a one-to-one or doing appraisal or having that really awful conversation that you need to have with them and to do it in a humane way because you become robotic. You become like you try and chase to the end of the meeting and run out of there. You don't focus on the individual. And I think that's the biggest mistake businesses make. So I'll always come to this as that problem. The business needs to be clear when they're developing leaders or they're developing people that you focus on those things, everything else will be taken care of. And I think
there's two key bits though. And I think there is two key things, and this is probably from my experience, but I think the first one is you get given a process for a one-to-one and that kind of stuff, and you try and follow it, and you're really, really rigid, and you're going through them steps.
Fill the boxing,
But you never ask one of the biggest learnings is asking how somebody wants to be managed, because everybody's different. And I think what you're taking on as a leader when you're first stepping into it is that you have to adapt around the people that you're managing to. It's not about your style and imparting that on them. You're actually having to be way more adaptable and actually react around people a lot more. And then the second thing I learned is that I thought my job was to make sure everyone's happy and make sure we're delivering the results. And actually, you try and, if you have somebody potentially that's underperforming, you try and get stuck in and get a bit more close and a bit more micromanagey. But that's not your job. Your job is to lift up the barriers of the system around them to enable them to do a good job, but it's ultimately on them to make sure that they do it. And I think that's really hard to let go of.
That's the third thing for me is that we talked about those two things and they're the most important, but I think the thing that I don't think we've said, because my brain's a bit scatty, but I think from my perspective is that what type of leader you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me is if you don't check into, because again, and I think we've all done this.
Yeah.
We've all gone, I'm going to be like that leader that I had.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and again, that leader probably for you was the worst leader you ever had.
Yeah.
Rather than you turn around, I'm going to learn from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately a business will not tell you what type of leader to be.
Mm-hmm.
They'll tell you what they want from you and how they want you to do things.
Yeah.
But I think it's on you and your development as an individual to be able to turn around and go, but how am I going to do this?
Yeah. Someone I spoke to recently said that when they move into leadership for the first time, you should sit down and write a personal manifesto,
Yeah.
like a one-pager, just like, this is how I want to choose to lead. So then how does that translate into teams? Because I think as you move up into leadership, you have a greater responsibility for setting the team culture and setting how the team works. What does a high-performing team look like? And can you give us any examples?
You're going to make me go first. I think it becomes a feeling for me. I think the best way of describing what a high-performing team feels like is, so we've just talked about that pressure you put on yourself as a leader or a manager when you walk into a team for the first time. You go, crap, I'm responsible for this. And you go, how am I going to make this happen? It's the complete opposite end of the scale. It's like when you've got your 25, 32-year-old child and you sit there and go, what's my role now? Because your relevancy changes completely. So a high-performing team is that you're sat there on the sidelines and you're just there to sort of answer questions and nurture and help and just make sure the direction is there. So the feeling is you're no longer necessary. And I think that the age-old thing around you make yourself redundant.
Yeah. Well, and that fits because one of the roles where we work together, like really pushed the book by Susan Wheeler, Creating Effective Teams. And that's the stage 4, is it?
Yeah,
it's more
yeah.
So, over time, like at the life cycle of the team, by the end of it, you're supporting and sitting on the side.
I think it's really key to look for indicators of that, though. Like, I think, and this is probably my personal view, so you'll probably disagree with some of these, but my version of a high-performing team is a group that's really collaborative and problem solve together, but with good conflict. So positive conflict, be able to challenge one another because you've got that psychological safety. You will say, actually, I don't really agree with that. And then I also think it's a group of people who, and you have kind of mentioned this, but is really aligned to a purpose. Like they want to do it for the same reasons. They're trying to achieve that same outcome. And I think as long as they can have the outcome, problem solve it, do it together, and actually challenge one another, that's my, like, it's a high performing team. Like that's when I know you've hit it.
I'm trying to find something to disagree with. But I do. Honestly, I think it is all those things, and I think it's a lot of the time. I think people turn around and say, "Well, is it worth the effort?" Because I think to achieve a high performing team, there is a lot of business or a manager, so however you scale, has to give up. And has to accept that it takes time to get there. And I think for me is that the benefits are once you get there, and I think they are tenfold in the amount of investment. I think the problem is that businesses put too much pressure on performance straight away. I think the long-term benefit of having setting up a high-performing team in the way that we have talked about pays off longer and more sustainable. And becomes the way that it sort of feeds the culture. The culture feeds it, but that feeds the culture as well. And we have worked in businesses together where you can see that. You step back and you go, this is how it should be.
Yeah, so you need it's almost, it's got kind of lagging measures that actually you need to look 6 months, a year, 2 years down the line to see where it really pays off compared to in the first 3 months as you're going through those painful setup stages.
It will be hard at the beginning, but the long-term output's so worth it.
But it goes back to org design. I think you intentionally setting up the business in a way and being clear on how you get to those stages. It shouldn't be a leap and a prayer. Coming back to a business owner or somebody that's responsible for a business, there has to be a framework and indicators that show this is how we get there. It takes time, and Susan Whelan talks about it quite a lot, but I think you as a business can enable that to be quicker if you do the right thing and not go, a business will try and chase that sort of value and that sort of that financial payback quicker for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Because those nice finance people that we talk about will sit there and go, we've got a problem here. And I think that's why the balance has to be between the two.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And thinking about some of the really practical things around kind of moving into management or leadership, and we've talked about how it's changed over time, but actually some of the new trends that we're seeing is that beyond just kind of managing the day-to-day work and the tasks, we're seeing a greater role in kind of understanding and working around mental health and developing people's individual purpose, making them think about how they belong. Is that a reasonable ask for managers these days?
I don't think you're trained as a mental health specialist to be able to actually support somebody. So you can listen, but you cannot, all you can do is signpost. And I think that's a trap that people might fall into, is like, God, I'm now taking on all of this other person's baggage, essentially. And you're not equipped to do that. So I think it's flag the risk, signpost them on, and know that you can listen, but your job is to help them find the right help that they need. As for belonging and well-being, I do think that is your job. Like, people need to feel like they belong in your team, and that's how you'll get that high-performing team at the end. Give them that purpose, give them that outcome that they're actually trying to achieve, and they'll feel like they belong anyway. It's a bit like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You kind of have to make sure that people do feel like they belong so that they can get to that kind of mastery side of stuff.
Yeah, again, the only thing I'd add is that, again, it comes back to the business has a responsibility. And I think for me, it comes back to the environment. I think there are responsibilities a business has to take, that if the way that you the way that you set up can create problems for people. And I think you have to be mindful, and I think there has to be oversight for managers where there are sort of checkpoints or trigger points, things like sickness leave and stuff like that, where you can actually sort of see patterns, but also being honest about how the environment, are we expecting too much out of people, and so but creating autonomy within an environment does enable people, again, it's a delicate balance, but I think too much autonomy scares the living hell out of people without that sort of that oversight and that nurture to be able to get them to sort of see their way free and how they get things done. But again, I think the emphasis has to be on businesses as well to sort of take some responsibility, because they're not responsible for people looking after themselves, but what they're responsible for is how they feel within the business that they've created. And I think that's important.
How well do you see organisations planning for this and designing ways to achieve this? How do they do talent development and succession planning? Can they hire for leadership, and what should we be looking for?
I do think it's possible to hire for leadership, but I have seen this happen in various different ways, where if you're not really strong on the values and what you want that team to actually look, feel like, that kind of stuff, you will hire the wrong person, and you'll hire somebody who will take it in a different kind of direction. So I think it is possible. However, I always think if you can grow people into the leaders that you want them to be, you'll have more loyalty, you'll have more kind of cohesion around what it is that we're actually trying to do. And I also think that they will help push it further and build on top of that, because they've grown up through that business. But it's not to say it's not impossible to hire people in. Of course, then people exist outside your organisation as well. But then you have to be really clear on the things that you're looking for.
Yeah. I think in part of your question, Matt, where you said sort of the succession planning, I think, again, it comes back to a business actually being clear what that looks like and what a good leader looks like for that business and the type of business it wants to be. And I think for me is that I think you can, and I think sometimes you have to hire, because I think there's a specific direction that you want to take the business in, whether it's a skill set or whether it's a different way of working or whether it's a service. I think you have to do that. So I think sometimes is that I think those are the only occasions, but I think then that becomes very, very important that you get the right person. I think culturally, the right person that's going to come in and sort of blend into the business in the way that you want. But, and again, that's that's the thing that is tricky, because I
Yeah.
think businesses, whether they're under pressure because they've spotted a new service or there is a new direction they need to go in for financial reasons, that one hire can basically disintegrate all the hard work.
Yeah, we've seen that happen. Where, you know, you hire in a skill set, or you promote a person because they're delivering on one kind of thing, and actually their values are slightly offset to the thing that you're after, and it unpicks. So it's really hard to build that culture. It can take years at times to really get that culture that you want, and one bad move of getting that wrong person in within 6 months can completely take it all apart.
Yeah. And I think I've seen that in the sense that from both sides, going for a new role, I could see I hadn't written a personal manifesto at that point, but if I had, there's certain businesses where I go like, I know that my manifesto and the business culture that's really strong really align, and that makes it a great role. But equally, once I was in, because there was a strong culture, it allowed me to kind of assimilate and just subtly adapt. If there's no culture and you go in and there's a culture vacuum, then it's hard to actually get on board with anything, and there's no cue.
I think what you touched on there is, I think you as again, from the other side, if you are recruiting somebody in, is that person sees that value and behaviour alignment. And I think for me is that culture doesn't really exist. For me, I think it's what is actually created by the things that you do that you can influence as a business. And I think for me is that it's just an umbrella term that, again, can be a bit clickbaity, and it can be that sort of like buzzword, like a lot of other things at the moment. But I think focusing on the culture or the feeling that you want a business to be and what's important, and knowing what those sacred cows are, the things that are non-forgivables, and your values and your behaviours, that's what creates the right culture. But I think as a person walking into a business, or somebody going, you know, I'm going to find another job, is that you spend time, if you are a leader, or even as somebody that isn't, you've got to make sure that those values are aligned to yours, because you'll just walk in there and go, what am I doing here?
When you say culture is an umbrella and not a thing.
Well, it's not a thing.
I think it is. I just think it's an outcome. I don't think you have control over what the culture is. I think you have control over things that create that feeling and what it's like to be there. So I think it's the outcome of all the work that you put in. I don't think it's not a thing.
No, but it's an umbrella term for a set of things.
Yeah,
For
so
me,
it is a thing.
I love it when you disagree.
Do culture. It's like, again, but that's the problem. That's like some businesses will turn around and go, culture is putting "be nice" on a poster and stick it to a wall, or like, you know, it just doesn't exist. It's like, it's the things that you do and how you work and the things that you do within your business that somebody turn around and say, that's not allowed. Don't do that.
Well, it's behaviour speak louder than words. So it's making sure that people behave in the way that you want to, so therefore you have that outcome and call out the behaviours that you don't want to see.
We've been working long enough to see this in practice. Every generation thinks the next one coming behind them is soft. Are they ever right?
No. No, and I say this because I've actually, as a millennial, always been branded with, you're entitled, you're this, you're that, and I just don't think that's true. I'm obviously in that generation of people where I work with loads of people who are really hardworking. I also know there's a lot of people that aren't. And I just think it's what you expect. So going back to like something that we mentioned earlier of a generation above always expects the people below to almost be just like them. Like, you're coming up, I've done this hard work. I've worked till 7 a.m., like from 7 a.m. till 4 a.m. and I've been in that office and I've done all of these things, and why don't you want to do that? And it's like, my perspective is, maybe this is controversial, but some millennial managers could be too soft because we did that 7 till 4 a.m. and we're like, we don't want to do that to anybody else ever again. We want to make it a lot better. But then the next, like Gen Z below us, they've also changed their expectations of work when they've come into it. Like, I thought I'd have to go in and be a junior and just work forever. That's what was on all the movies, that kind of stuff. So my mindset was like, I've got to live at the office. I don't think that's the same anymore at all, that people are taught. So their expectation of what that work relationship looks like is completely different. And then, like you guys just did.
Wow.
Play hard, work hard, play hard.
Don't know what you mean. I think for I don't see generational things. I don't. You know, again, I get why it's a thing. Again, it's a way of labelling, and we're very good in society of labelling things. I think from my perspective, I think society influences and changes people, and that's sort of like in your formative years, that then has an influence on how you behave or what your expectations are. I think just be a good manager, be a good leader. So speak to the human, understand the person, and manage that individual in front of you. Don't have any preconceived labels. Everyone can be soft. I could be soft sometimes, but I just don't see it. And again, I don't like conforming to what
lazy stereotypes.
Yeah, exactly. We've all read the books. I'd rather be objective. I think what's the outcome I'm looking for? It's like it's got nothing to do with whether they were born in whatever year. It's like, who are they as individuals? Be super clear on how you want to work with them, and you can be soft. Like Joel can be soft. It's like, from my perspective, it's like, has nothing to do when you were born. I think it's about you working with that person and having very clear expectations, which we've said all along. I think as a leader or a manager, it's like just that clarity. It's like being clear why they're here and what they want from it. And it's always that value exchange. And I think for me, you get that right. It has nothing to do with I'm older than Jess, which only by a little bit. But I think I just don't agree with it, to be honest.
I think it's interesting how you've mentioned your personal manifesto quite a bit, though, like thinking about going for a job and that kind of stuff. That is something you should do as something, no matter what level you're at, whether it's leader or not leader, and that, because actually that will help the person that's going to manage you to understand who you are and what you need and what you're actually trying to achieve. And I bloody hate writing objectives. Like, it's the worst task that you can ever ask me to do. But I know I just want to do great stuff and continually develop. But asking me to be really specific and put metrics around that, I'm like, I know what I'm trying to be. Like, I know what that means for me. But metrics kind of don't work. But if you actually enable somebody, regardless of generations, you can say, this is what's important to me. And then you can work on that relationship to figure out how to get there. And the generations can then go, well, it doesn't really matter as long as we're both aligned on what we're trying to achieve here.
Yeah, I'm interested in some of the stuff you've been thinking about and developing and building with modern.works, and some of the tools and methods that you've put together. What are the things that you feel like are like gaps in the broad, thing that you're trying to, what's the gap you're trying to fill with kind of tools and methods and ideas?
I think if I go back to always like the purpose of why we set up Modern, it's probably a lot from me having chats with you when I was having a meltdown about being a new manager, and then turning that into something. But it goes back to the beginning of, you get that new role and you're like, yeah, I've got my promotion and it's all wonderful, and then you don't know where to start. There's a whole new skill set that you have to take on, and you've not practiced any of that before. So then you start like buying loads of books and trying to figure out what this all means, and that can take forever. Like, I'm not a consistent reader, so it takes me forever to finish a book anyway. And then, like, I think one of the main things that we kind of thought about within modern.works is, how do you make it so is it snappy? There's always them like short-term moments that you really need actionable, what do I do in this kind of moment? And I think from the method side of the cards, that's what we tried to...
Experimentation.
Yeah. Tried to put in there, so you can like refer them and go, try this, try this, try this. And then have a set of principles that are like, this is what we believe makes a good leader. So that was kind of why we set that up. But then there's the other side, which is the community.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's that one thing, is that even within businesses, they miss the opportunity to create a community of people where they can come together in a safe environment and go, God, are you having this problem? How are you dealing with that? It's as managers, but even looking broader than that and creating, like, actively trying to encourage people to find mentors, which is 100% the right thing to do. So to actually break out your thing and create a safe space for you to be able to do that. So I think for me, those two things is that you can get so overwhelmed, and I'm sure the first thing you do when you say, yeah, I'm going to be a leader or a manager now, you go to Amazon and buy the top 10 books, or you go to Google, how do I do this? And like, you're then faced with this overwhelm of, well, where do I start? You will get this stuff from a thing. I think you always start the process with, I want to succeed. And I think there is, and again, I've done it, and I think I know a million people have done it as well. It's like, where do I start? What do I do? And I think for me, is that's the two sides of the coin, which is, we've read all this. We're not saying this. It's you as a person going back to as a leader or a manager. It's like, what type of leader do you want to be, or what type of manager do you want to be? It's like, well, what are the things I need to sort of focus on? So your own strengths and weaknesses.
Yep.
Yeah.
And actually going, sort of reflecting, sort of taking time yourself to say, and I think investing in yourself, but making it super clear that you want to be that person anyway.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, then you're gonna absolutely hate it. And you will at the end of it, because it's like the thing that the payoff has to be that thing is developing that human being.
Yeah.
Is seeing that team develop into something pretty amazing, or seeing that business turn into something that is going, wow, this is excellent.
Yeah.
It's not just about making money for founders or owners. It's about, well, clients are super happy and everyone's just sat there just having a good time, but doing really good work.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's why.
Yeah.
It's like, and it still is. I don't. And again, we're not. If we had millions of pounds, then maybe we'd turn it into sort of a Simon Sinek thing. But it's like for me, it's like you sit there going, it's still a problem. You sit there now going, if a leader starts, is that any of the major tech companies in the Northwest, and I won't name them, all have manager or leader programs that you spend 3 weeks, step by PowerPoint. You might have some learn by doing and conversation.
Yeah.
There might be some form of like community where you can check in with people, but it's not about, those self-help groups where you sit there going, geez, I've got this problem. Who's going to help me with this? Or,
Be able to talk it through. Because I think sometimes it's learning from what other people have done wrong as well. You don't want just, this is how to do it. It's so what did you try? Okay, that didn't work. Why didn't that work? Can we talk about that?
Well, that actually leads us on nicely. So my question is going to be, as you moved into management or leadership, is there one thing that you wish a mentor or a coach or someone could have told you earlier?
The things that I wish I was told, I mean, it's one of the environment ones that you told me is like, you are not responsible for that, what that individual does, essentially, because I can't help what they do, that's on them. You're in control of the environment, and that's what you're responsible for, is like lifting up barriers, making sure that you're giving them the right space to do it.
Yeah.
But then I also think there's a side to that, which is, like, I've loved having you as that mentor kind of there, but I do wish somebody had been like, you can't take everything on. Because I'm naturally always going to do that. That's my natural personality. I take responsibility for things that aren't mine. Like, I feel the impact. I'm a bit of an empath. And I think I just wish that there was always like a mirror just being held there of somebody just saying, you can't do it all. You have to learn to start to like care for yourself as well as other people.
Yeah.
It probably is too granular detail, but I think just thinking of what Jess was saying there, and I think something that we've sort of developed together, or I think I fell into by accident, was this sort of coaching mindset. But that as a leader or a manager is that you assess the problem that you're faced with. And it's like at that moment you don't have to react, to sort of hold back that trigger to sort of go, I'm going to solve this and jump in, because that removes the learning for the person or the group of people that you're there. And I think for me is that you are as a manager or a leader sat there going, okay, what's the worst can happen if what type of person do I need to be in this moment? So what's the worst thing that can happen if I don't have to lead? So jump in, lead. So I have to do that because a project's going to be late, or the business is going to lose millions of pounds. So you have to lead. You lead from the front. I think for me, but then it's like, why can't I lead from the side? Why can't I get alongside this person or this team and go, okay, let's just understand the problem, give some sort of direction, sort of nurture them that way. Or if you're seeing the problem, why can't you lead from the back and almost just allow them to make the mistake? So again, evaluate where you are, evaluate the problem, but the value in them learning from that mistake is then get them into a room and just sit there and go, you know what, this went wrong, didn't it? So let's try and understand what we do differently next time.
I've just finished reading a book called The Advice Trap, and you pretty much summed up the whole book in that, which is pretty much, if you don't give people the space to try and make mistakes, then you're always disempowering them, and they're always waiting for you to give them that next move, and you set the tone.
And that was one of the best pieces of advice that you've just reminded me of, that I tell you about all the time. I can't believe I've got it. Is don't steal the opportunity away from somebody, because I used to be that person that would try and like help and give too much advice and just get stuck in. And actually, I was stealing that opportunity for someone else to learn and try and figure it out on their own.
It's the same. I have a parallel with my daughter who's 7. She always says, "Dad, how do I spell this word?" I say, "Well, how do you think you spell it?" And she does it, and I'm like, "That's exactly right." Or, "Oh, do you remember about the silent B on the end?" You know, that, and actually, by getting her to try it, and I've done exactly the same thing with managers in my team, where they come in and they're in a panic, something's gone wrong. Say, "Well, sit down, take a breath, and then tell me how you think we should proceed." And actually, they had a really good idea, and they needed the confidence and needed to kick it around and bounce it off somebody, but they actually knew what they needed to do.
It's that trigger moment, isn't it? So when you sit there, is that when you're presented with a problem, is to have that pause. Like is knowing the right thing to do, is creating that step moment or that pause moment before you do.
Cool. So as we start to wrap up, we'll finish with our regular feature, which is best case, worst case. So best case, if emerging leaders get the support that they need, what changes?
I think from my perspective, I think if you give leaders the right support, I think you get a really successful business. I think you get really motivated teams, people that are going to talk outside of the business about what's amazing about it. I think good leadership that are supported, or good people that are supported, will talk about how cool that place is to work. And I think that's, for me, the most valuable thing you can do. You do that.
And I get a sense from, even as you're saying it, that like the big thing is that it compounds. Like every extra person that comes in and gets the right support and leads in the right way, and it has that short-term impact, but actually long-term payoff.
100%.
And I think even from an individual level, like if you get more confident the more that you do it. Like you have that moment where you go, God, is this right for me? But actually, if you're set off in the right direction and have that right kind of level of support, you're confident that, okay, it might not be the right thing, but you're doing stuff that you've got guidance for, and you're actually confident in the way that you're executing yourself, which will help you to learn and experiment and grow, because it kind of starts with you. And I think if the business can set it up, then you can actually feel confident to keep going.
So on the flip side, the worst case scenario, what are the common kind of pitfalls or traps or things that leaders are getting wrong?
Stop looking at me. I think we've touched on it previously. I think it's the staff. It's their fault. I think it's like, and it's not. I think a lot of the time I think a business needs to be reflective on itself. I think it's very rarely down to the people. It happens. There are those cliche brilliant jerks within businesses that just come in, they're chancers. They want to take as much as they can and then move on to the next business. But I think if a business takes on the challenge and actually sets it up properly and how it should be, and reflects on that and learns from that, I think they get the right things out of it.
I think from an individual level, because you keep going from the business, so I'm going to go from the individual. From an individual perspective, I think there's things that you're trying to chase the dopamine, so you take the credit for like what other people are doing, or you don't give them the opportunity to get into the room. I think that's a really key thing that people kind of go, but I still want to get the pat on the back. Like I want to be the one to shout about the success. And I think that one's kind of dangerous to fall into, because then your team are like, but I did the hard work. And just like you're trying to look after you, but you're not looking after the team. And then I think from another kind of, I suppose, like worst thing that people can do is just not listen to people. Like your job is to enable them to do stuff. And if you're not actively listening to the problems that they're having, to the things that they're actually doing, to the things that are just challenges that are coming up against, there's no point in doing it. Like, you've got to be a good listener if you're going to be a good manager. There's no way to get around it.
Yeah, I think building on that, I think sort of listening is a key part of it, but you as a leader, being reflective and actually asking for feedback. I think the worst thing as a leader not to do is to ask for that feedback. And to actually go back to that thing we've said a few times, which is, what type of leader am I? And actually not being that person that just walks around saying, I'm the cleverest person in the room. I know how to do this, but never take those reference points or sit down with people and say, can you just give me some feedback? Be specific about what type of feedback you want, but you're sat there going, I can learn from this, and I can continually improve, or I can continually evolve. I think the worst thing you can do is just to sort of believe your own hype, and it says something else.
And I'm kind of going through that at the moment. Like, I've got a reputation at work now for being the busy person, and everyone's like, I know you're really busy, I know you're really busy, and I'm like, that is not how I want you to perceive me. I want you to know that I will always be there for you. So I'm constantly saying, what is it do you think I'm busy with? What do you think that, like, do you think I will make time for you? And I'm really specific with that feedback because I don't want the negative side of that, oh, you're really busy, to come across, because it's like, I will drop things for people. I will be like, I'm going to move this meeting so that we can have a chat. And I don't want that to ever not be the thing that people take away. So constantly asking for that and like checking into how I'm perceived, because I don't want to fall into that pitfall.
I think, go back to the original question. I think the worst thing they can do is not be that approachable person and actually give that perception that feedback is important. And I think actively seek it and sort of build that mechanism within your business or your team that they see it's the right thing to do, and to see you doing it sort of then builds that sort of culture.
And so give and receive feedback and be vulnerable and demonstrate that
it does so many things
see.
just by asking for feedback. You like hit so many things to like empower the team.
But again, just don't do it surface level.
Actually,
you as a person, actually, as a leader, the worst thing you can do is by not working on yourself. And I think if you don't do that, then it will eat you alive. It is the loneliest job in the world that you can do, is then you just sit there and go, what am I getting from it? Because you have to get something from it. And I think for me, it's sort of developing that and sticking to it. So back to your manifesto, I think you have to, is that at the centre of that is that you have to be developing yourself, and you have to be getting better at that.
That feels like a great place to end. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you on the next podcast.